ado, it's my pleasure to introduce the first speaker today, and a great friend of STC and also a great supporter of STC. My pleasure is in inviting Raghu Krovvidy. Raghu is a Chief Delivery Officer, Innovation and Practices and Offering Management at Cigniti Technologies. He's a seasoned veteran, and I can vouch for that because for the last 22 years we've been interacting on a number of topics ranging from management to quality engineering to culture building to strategizing and growing. And he's held a number of leadership positions, and the first time I met him, it was in Accenture, where he was leading the capability, and he was a strong proponent of encouraging STC. I'm really glad that he's come back to STC to present his experiences and his journeys, over and his experiences with a number of Fortune 500 and Global 2000 companies, where he's currently involved in accelerating and assuring their digital transformation journeys. Before joining Cigniti, I remember Raghu held leadership positions with Accenture, App Labs, Iris Digital, and NIT. And he's a very, very fundamental thinker, and I really love conversing with him on these particular topics. Without much ado, let me welcome, Raghu, who will be presenting today, on how do we navigate the digital journey through the lens of quality or the quality way. Over to you, Raghu, and looking forward to hearing your provocative thoughts again, as always.
Hey, thank you, Pradeep. I think, as always, the passion with which you conduct this conference and bring the community together is second to none. So I will give it to you for that. And whether we like it or not, I think pandemic has been the biggest lever and driver that has pushed the world into truly a digital world. And before that happened, all of us have been thinking of ways and means to automate, to digitize, to digitalize, to both artificial learning. I mean, we had hundreds of jargons, thousands of technologies, probably countless approaches, but what an invisible virus did to us in a very different way was completely different, right? So we suddenly stand in a digitally enabled and digitally accelerated world, and therefore I think the topic to that extent, which I am presenting today, is how do we navigate that digital journey the quality way. And there's a specific thought process that went into why this topic. I'll take 30 seconds for this. One is, I think every one of us on the call have heard the word digital countless times. The challenge is also that it is the most misunderstood, sometimes abused, sometimes understood word. But there is no universal definition concretely, or an industry definition that tells what digital is. Nevertheless, we all understand some aspects of that journey and what it means. While all of the organizations and companies across the world want to embrace this digital journey, um, I think the biggest challenge is in how we navigate it. And most of the journey has got elements of known tracks, known paths, and also unknown paths, right? So there is a little bit of pathfindership, and there is also a bit of leveraging the path that is in the best interest of the company, or one of the best industry practices, like you said. It's a combination of both, and hence the word navigation. You should know when to take which path, right? So, but the more important thing is doing it the quality way, which means that the whole digital journey path is complex, unpredictable, sometimes structured, expensive in its own way, um, and you often don't get to reset it completely and do it all over again, right? So it's very important, as you go through that navigation, you look at the quality aspects as well more closely. And I think before this whole wave came, the whole left shift word was very prevalent in the industry, and of course it is prevalent even today. Um, so this whole left shift was, why can't we get into the left side of the V model when it was waterfall? In the agile, can we get into the pod where we are looking at quality while the development is happening? Then we said further left shift means going to the requirement stage, um, and now I think the general thinking is there is there is nothing called a left shift, right shift. It is embedded all across, so it has to be continuous. So it's almost establishing continuous or establishing quality elements continuously along the entire navigation that you take in the digital journey. And I think that is paramount for a successful digital transformation. So that's the thought process that went into crystallizing this keynote title. Now, let's come to some basic stats to start with. One is, I think, the jury is out in some way that successful digital transformations are rare, and it is also difficult to sort of sink that in, because I think billions and billions of dollars have been spent in digital transformations over the last many years. New titles like like chief digital officers, um, uh, and leadership titles to that effect have come into vogue. Separate budgets have been created for digital transformations. Uh, Revenues have got started reporting in terms of digital versus non-digital, whether they are service providers or enterprises. Um, while all of this is happening over the last several years, uh, we still are talking about successful digital transformations are rare. And the source that you see on the screen is from BCG Group, where they say that um, the odds of success are at 30%, which means 1 out of 3. Um, so therefore, it is very important for us to first understand why they are rare. I think all of us have some opinions on what is digital, what should we do to enhance the digital value in the journey, etc., etc. But I think it's good to see in the mirror as to why digital transformations have failed so far, and why they are rare. And I have put together 5 key items. Of course, there are many others, or you can aggregate them into many others. But this is based on what we have seen in our experience and in the industry that we deal with. I think the first challenge, or I won't say challenge, the first um, puzzle that needs to be figured out is what's your digital transformation objective? Um, People think it is automation. People think it is building a mobile app over a legacy platform. People think it is sometimes on-prem to cloud movement, um, and sometimes it is about enriching the customer experience, measuring the efficiency of business processes in a company. Um, is it one? Is it all of them? Is it some of them? Um, there is no, how do I say, a referenceable etched on the stone answer. But it is important for the organization to sit back and first define what are its digital transformation objectives. And most of the organizations aren't able to do that in a reasonably comprehensive manner. I understand you can't be 100% accurate. So different parts of the enterprises set off in different directions with different objectives, um, without necessarily having a collaborative, signed off, clear digital transformation objective. That's one of the biggest reasons for why the success is rare, because if your objective is not defined well enough, then the way you measure your progress to reach to that objective is definitely not well enough, and that itself is an impediment to declaring a given program's successful program. So one of the questions that we need to ask, whether we are in the QA teams, dev teams, business teams, product teams, leadership teams, IT teams, is If what we are trying to do is is labeled as a digital journey in the company, then it's important to ask why are we doing this and what's the end objective, and and be a part of a forum where all of these are collated together and the purpose is clearly defined as to why a digital transformation is taken up by an enterprise or an organization. The second thing is the moment you have had an objective in mind, um, then you have to deal with uncertainty. Is uncertainty new in IT, or with the general marketplace? The answer is no. Uncertainty has always been there around. Ambiguity, uncertainty, these have all been there around. So what is new about this being challenged? I mean, this should therefore would have had an impact even before digital transformation, right? Uncertainty was always making companies go up and down, but I think the impact on uncertainty is more, and it is never impactful than ever before. um, and uncertainty could be in terms of macroeconomic factors, market factors, competition, the new technology that will come suddenly and disrupt a given tech stack, new apps that are constantly born, and also the rapid change in the customer's behavior, the way they want to look at things, the way they want to buy things, the way they want to experience things, and the fact that now everybody in some way wants to take the water from the global market, sort of tap into the global market. You will have to necessarily lead, or deal with so many ambiguities, so many uncertainties. And it is not only just knowing about those uncertainties, you also need to understand the uncertainty impact on your digital transformation journey. And that, I think, is also a gray area in many cases, because organizations are heads down taking an engineering view for digital transformation. Probably the market facing teams, whether they are customer teams, sales teams, services teams, they probably are looking at customer as a means and giving some input. Probably the CXX leadership is looking at competition, how the macroeconomic factors are failing. But all of these don't really, uh, how do I say, generate a response model for the enterprise to deal with uncertainty. And that is where I think the biggest reason for unsuccessful digital transformations. Now, the complexity is, with the second factor, you're combining the third factor. Now, already I'm dealing with a lot of ambiguity. Now, I will have to deal with that ambiguity and uncertainty with accelerating speed. So, the speed of how I respond to my clients' needs, the speed at how I fix my defects, the speed at how I enhance my experience because my competition got me something, the speed at which I move in the market, the speed at which I roll out my products and services, and the speed at which I course correct. If you remember, during the title, we spoke about navigating the digital journey through a quality way. So, how do I reset things and again restart things? Now, these are all not engineering models, not mathematical models. These are softer uh, operating models, sign off models, governing models that give you the ability to accelerate with a certain speed. And in the process of doing it, enterprises falter, service providers falter. Somehow we have to get something into the market and then go redo it, and then say that the experience has not been great, and hence this whole digital transformation of that particular journey has not been great. Now, the fourth thing that has contributed significantly to this is approach, the approach taken. The approach could be whether you're doing a big bang approach, whether you're doing a modular approach, whether you're doing if you take an engineering SDLC view, an agile DevOps approach, whether you're putting yourself at the center or customer at the center. That definition is also uh, dependent on the enterprise's context, and that context is where the hook is, because every enterprise has got its own way of connecting to its customers, and that context is important. And last but not the least is, if you have figured out how to do 1, 2, and 3 and 4, you also need to figure out how you will manage this whole thing from a point of not being digitally transformed to a point of being digitally transformed in a certain way. Now, all of us as practitioners on the call, if we reflect for a moment in whichever journeys that we are in, engineering, leadership, enablement, and wearing quality hats, I'm very, very sure if you ask these 5 questions as to whether my objectives are defined for digital transformation, how is my enterprise dealing with uncertainty, what are the steps taken to ensure that speed and quality balance is high and enablement of speed is there, what approach have we taken, and how are we managing evolution. The answers to these 5 questions, if they are not satisfactory, or there are gaps in that, or you don't have answers to that, we can be pretty sure that the overall successfulness of the digital transformation is likely to be probable, and probably low. So I want to leave that thought with the practitioners so that they can ask these questions when they go back to their enterprises and themselves understand what is the overall digital transformation framework therefore we have to make our digital transformation piece right now. So therefore, how do we respond to these, right? And I'm sure all of you agree that 20 minutes conversation is not enough. We can go for days. But I will quickly go with some basic nuggets that different enterprises have used. And some of these will tie into the previous slide that I made. The first is you need to have an integrated strategy, right? Integrated strategy tied into the objectives of digital transformation, which we have spoken about, which means, okay, so if your digital transformation is to enhance customer experience, is to bring about efficiencies in the business process, is to bring about increased revenue, whatever that is. So your QA strategy has to be integrated, and not only the QA strategy, your overall digital transformation journey, the digital transformation strategy that has to be crafted, articulated, and and it has to be integrated from the technology objectives of the company to the business objectives of the company, that they are there. The second, of course, is leadership commitment. Again, none of these are new to us, but all of these are also new to us because you don't find them happening in the best of the magnitude. So, what is leadership commitment? So, someone at the top, depending on where the digital transformation is happening, is it happening at the enterprise level? Is it happening at the business unit level? Is it happening at a product level for one product? There has to be a chief sponsor, and that person needs to drive the objectives of these digital transformations in a certain way, and that is leadership commitment. Now, the moment it is a top down approach, then naturally your IT, your business, your other enabling functions, your research functions, your marketing functions, your sales functions, all of them align and understand those objectives of that leadership commitment. So that's extremely important. The third, of course, is right talent. And today, I'm sure a lot of practitioners on this call agree that right talent means, these days, very simply put, is Java full stack, .NET full stack, data scientist, business analyst, SDET. I mean, SDET is now beaten to death. Now it is probably a super debt, not even an SDET. Uh, these are very um these are very bottom up views of what is needed to contribute into the digital transformation journey. But I think what's important to understand is, I'm not talking about skill, I'm talking about talent. And if you map it to the first slide that we saw, the ability to deal with uncertainty, the ability to increase speed, the ability to navigate ambiguities, the ability to make decisions, the ability to govern, that's the key talent. Engineering talent, I'm not discounting, is very, very fundamental. But it is just not about Azure, AWS, GCP, Python, JScript, JavaScript. Uh, it is also about that, but it is not only about that, that a digital transformation journey gets successful. So in your teams, you will have to reflect and understand, well, I'm contributing into the engineering nugget that is asked out of me, but am I also contributing into the five list of items that we spoke about in the first slide. And if I'm not contributing, if I am I navigating, am I making those decisions, am I dealing with uncertainty, am I governing well? If not, then then who in my team is doing it, and are we doing that role play together as a team? If you ask these questions reflectively, and if you do that exercise that I told you at the first slide, write down those five, answer all the questions, and then discuss as a team who is doing what, then you will understand what I mean by saying the right talent. um, the fourth important nugget which I am harping upon is agile governance. I'm not calling it governance, I'm calling it agile governance, which maps to my fifth point of the first slide, which is managing evolution. So governance means, yeah, you can sit and review for hours together, but ability governance is not only about ability to bring a change in the journey. Agile governance is also to say that the ability to bring a change in the review also is important. So agile governance is has got two factors there. One is you're governing the agility of change to bring about a certain digital transformation outcome, but you're also ready to make changes to your governing model, the metrics that you measure, the ways that you measure, the way you take actions, the way you understand whether that action has borne a result or not is also very important. So agility in governance is important. And finally, effective monitoring, which means go and tie it back to your digital transformation objectives. If it is to enhance customer experience, then is your customer experience increased? If it is to realize revenue, have your revenues on the digital side increased? If it is bringing efficiency, how much of that efficiency has gained? But that's only one dimension. Make no mistake, all these metrics have a bearing on one another. That's also important for effective monitoring, which means if I say I want to bring significant efficiency in a business process, and that's my digital transformation journey, fair, that's fine. But bringing that efficiency sometimes can have a negative bearing on the experience. And by the way, customer here is not only an end customer. Digital transformation journeys are not only for the end buyer in the marketplace. Digital transformation journeys are also for internal customers, employees. So you could have a digital transformation affecting your internal journey, internal customer, or external customer. And most of these generally are hinged as one at the cost of the other and not one and the other. So if you get speed, quality will get affected. If it is quality, then probably experience will get affected. So effective monitoring is a the word there is not looking at those metrics in isolation, but in totality. And finally, which is generally the first priority for any company, I've put it at last deliberately, is a business-led modular technology, which is technology is important, but technology is an enabler, is at the at the bedrock, but of the overall journey that we take. But business-led modular technology is important, just not technology. So eventually, that technology stack that you put in should have a bearing on digital transformation somewhere and somehow. So all these six needs to be connected, and across all these points, it's very important that we look at the quality factor going. So if you broadly summarize um, all of these, then these are four types of assurances that you will need to keep in mind as you traverse through the digital journey. One is, if you remember, we just concluded saying that the technology that you use, the business led technology landscape that you use, will be very important for digital transformation. So that technology assurance is important. Whichever platforms you are offering for your customers' consumption, are those platforms defect free? Are those platforms driving the digital transformation objective that you want to drive? So that assurance is the technology assurance piece, which is fundamental for the end user's experience. Now, once the technology stack is taken care, you will now talk about functional assurance, which means all of us know functional assurance to its last mile. We have been living and breathing in this. But their functional assurance also goes a little bit beyond, right? So it is not just the functionality of the application. You will also look at the context in which the application is performing, the environment in which it is performing. Now, Now is the age of where all of the apps are consumed on all types of devices across the world. So your functional assurance is broadly is the application behaving the way it has to be behaving across the environments, across the landscape, across the types of devices. Then you move into business assurance, which is the next step in the value chain, which is when you see changes or disruptions in the consumers that are consuming your application, whether they are internal or external. And this disruption can be in terms of volume, spikes, variety, different types of consumer profiles coming in, and also the way in which they are consuming the applications. Example could be holiday season. Example could be they are comparing your products to 100 other competitors and then taking a decision, right? So business assurance is important in terms of not only looking at the functionality of the application, but eventually what is it affecting our business with. Downtimes are an important consideration here, right? And finally, eventually the decision to buy or sell something in on an application is done by that end user who is the decision maker, whether he's internal, external, to use it or not, to buy or sell. So as long as you are taking that experience into consideration, whether the content is relevant, right, valid, contextual, and experience led, then most likely the customer is going to stay with you. So this is the value chain that you have to put for yourselves and see whether you're traversing through those four nuggets that I said. So to conclude, from a quality aspect, some key bits for you to consider. From a technology perspective, reliability matters. And you look at that note at the bottom: 1 in 5 organizations experience a serious or severe outage and have experienced outage in the past 3 years. And I'm sure that is also due to the adoption of digital during pandemic. But nevertheless, I spoke about technology being at the core also is important. So if the reliability of technology doesn't exist, it doesn't matter what digital transformation you have taken up. Similarly, another important nugget is security. And look at that data. Global average total cost of a data breach is 4.35 million. It's an average. And I'm sure these are only increasing in bounds. That's again a reliability issue. If I'm not even secure on the platform, I don't even care about your digital transformation, what you bring to the table, right? Then you look at precision, right? This is a functional piece, for example, in the functional assurance piece. um, and you look at the nugget there, the direct cost of quality in the medical device industry is 26 billion to 36 billion. A lot of medical devices are coming in the market from the healthcare side today. Everything is getting devised, like digitized in some way or platformized in one sense. Now, if precisions are not there in regulated industries, again, digital transformation, whatever great we did in the first 5 bullet points of our slide one, really don't matter. When it comes to business assurance, scale. Yeah, I had a great experience when I was buying, say, in Amazon before the festival season, and during the festival season, it doesn't work. Um, does I mean, user doesn't care about what your digital transformation strategies and journeys. And look at that, operational software failures are 10 times costlier than defects. And if you remember 5-10 years back, we were beating the drum in the industry that cost of solving a defect early in the life cycle is important, because finding a defect in production is extremely high, 10x, 20x. Now we are not even talking about that cost. We are now talking about operational failures, environments coming down, environment slowing down, uh, wrong data getting popped up, any of those things, right? Operational software failures was only adding additional layer to defect failures, and that's very, very important at a business assurance level. Similarly, performance. Look at that. By 2025, organizations that are investing in building digital immunity will increase customer satisfaction by decreasing downtime by 80%. And we are not talking about decrease of downtime by 80% um, in relation to already the uptime being say 70%. Today, if your uptime is 70%, 75%, 80%, nobody will even come back to you to consume, especially the external customers. Internal customers are slightly forgiving generally than the external customers, but external customers will not even spare you if your downtime is 1% or 2%. Now, the challenge for the enterprises is in that 1% or 2% downtime, they have to further reduce it by 80%. That's only when the customer satisfaction is going to increase. And finally, from a experience perspective, convenience matters. And convenience is a very, very broad word, but everything that irritates you about using an application in a particular context can be attributed to some convenience in some way. So eventually the customer should say, yeah, it's frictionless, it is convenient, I just do it. Whether it is user friendly, it is intuitive, whether it is proactive, whether it is suggestive, whether it is predictive, all of that falls into this word, because that's the colloquial representation of whether a customer likes your app frictionless or not. So therefore, convenience matters, and 61% of users won't give an app a second chance if they had a bad first experience. So which means you have lost the market before you have gained it. 61% of users. Okay, so that's important. So all in all, I think, just to summarize in three statements, we started with saying that we have to understand why digital transformation successes are rare. These are the five reasons, and those five reasons have to be answered to the second level, third level in your respective digital transformations. Then broadly you categorize everything that you do into six blocks of building success for digital transformation, right from looking at integrated strategy on the left that we spoke about, to identifying a business led technology stack on the right. And then you break all of your quality into four: the functional piece, which is at the application level, the technology piece, which is at the technology level, then the functional piece, which is at the application level, then the ensuring that the business is not impacted in any way at the market level, and finally experience at the customer level. So if you tie all of these four, then very likely your digital transformation will succeed. So that's broadly from me, but of course, some of these things, there are more slides. When you get the slide where you will see, and to be able to do all of this, innovation matters. Now if you guys tell that, I we can do it the regular way but still achieve all of this, nobody cares so long as you achieve. But we know that if you have to handle speed, agility, ambiguity, technology disruption, constantly give more experience, somebody has to question status quo in all the nuggets, and that's what innovation stands here. So that's broadly what I had got to say, guys, and therefore please look at quality centric navigation will also always ensure you being digital first and digitally successful as well. With that, I open the floor for any questions people may have.
Oh, sorry. Fantastic. I was just texting the backstage team saying that, like, I need to go on stage. I have a lot of questions, and people are asking a lot of questions. Okay. So, Raghu, that was fantastic. And I think that gave a very good perspective. And my summary was, uh, can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, perfect. Okay, because you're so straight poker faced, and I was not sure whether I'm being heard or not. Like, so just to make it lighter in the morning. So I realized, there are four key takeaways for me if I were to say that. Number one, there is a huge fundamental shift from being just assuring quality of a particular product to actually looking at assurance from a much wider perspective. And there are five aspects, that an organization should really think about. But I think the challenge is that all of them are happening concurrently and they're not a sequential. elements that are happening in the organization, and they're happening concurrently, which is why we need to take a very integrated view of how we will solve this particular problem, because there's the problem of concentric circles, right? And at the end of it is, when you're talking about digital assurance, you're actually talking about the customer experience, as a whole, and not just application as a key part of it, which was the original thought process. And the last one, which I wrote for myself on a nice note, was irrespective of whether you shift left or whether you shift right or whether you do it continuously, 61% of the applications don't get a second chance if they don't meet the goal.
Yeah,
Now, we could think about up and down and left and right and, roundabout, all those could be interesting words, but I think we have come a very good full circle to realize, finally what we are doing is actually minimizing the risk of using an application to a customer, correct? And I think that's a big shift for us, and I think that kind of catapults the assurance teams, to really look at it from the business viewpoint. And I can recollect, in probably 2012 or 2013, when we talked about, we would also say, hey, what the hell are we doing here? We are just talking testing applications, coding. And then suddenly, and now it seems like, okay, we've waited long enough to hear those good words, where the industry is saying, we don't need you to do test applications, we have codeless automation for that. In fact, what we need is an assurance that our business, will continue to service our customers the manner we designed them to be. So that was a great takeaway. But I think there are also a lot of questions which stem from that, Raghu. One of the interesting questions I see from the audience is, transformation is a change exercise, correct? And it's not in, it's sometimes a metamorphosis, is what you're really looking at, especially when you deal with a large organization. Now, these big caterpillars, could end up to be giant anacondas in many organizations, and they may never transform into a nice butterfly the way they visualize it. So the question is, when we deal with these inhibitors to transformation, there is inertia. More than the inertia, I think what bothers people is their inability to accept that they cannot transform, right? So now, what would be your take on that view? In the sense, how would we counter and how would we engage and educate and evangelize and illuminate? Now all those are lovely adjectives, but how do we make people accept that change is essential? Especially when they're doing a massive investment like this. Yeah.
that's a very good question. In fact, that is the most important reason why digital transformations fail as well, or success is rare.
Hmm.
And I'll tell you based on what we see in our clients landscape. um, if you remember the first bullet point that I spoke about, why digital transformations have failed for most of it was the objectives, defining the objectives. And it appears very simple, but the problem is, in most of the enterprises, you will see fancy program names getting created, right? For something around digital transformation, or a core committee team formed for some digital transformation, or $1 million budget being put separately and saying we are going to get digitally transformed, or a CXX level person coming and giving a broad vision of what the digital transformation is. All that is good, all that is important. I think most of the enterprises, um, where they see a pain and a challenge is, I am a firm believer that people are always willing to change. People people are always willing to change, provided they know what is their contribution helping into affect that change. That last mile connect is where mostly it gets missed. The senior leadership develops something, then the middle management takes it in terms of a KRA or a KPA. Then, sometimes vendors are consolidated, vendors are changed, technology is changed, some metrics are thrown in, some SDLC models are changed. Nobody knows why. Or the actual people who participate and add value into the digital transformation journey overall, affecting the end client, they have no freaking clue. They only know that they are part of this program in some way or the other. Now, a human who is intelligent enough, who is ready to change his behavior, to come and embrace your change, if that willpower is not even addressed in terms of inclusivity, or even conviction, then naturally the first thing that comes is inertia to change, because I don't know why. You're asking me to move from agile to DevOps. I don't know why. You're asking me to remove tool A and put tool B. I was comfortable with tool A. I don't know why. You're asking me to change the button in the screen because some customer thinks that way. I don't know why. So I think if we can address that piece, which means we will have to spend a lot of time in socializing, in spending time with teams and get their inputs and make them feel a part of that change. Then I have also seen enterprises in my landscape where change has happened overnight. It is just that if you don't get that inclusivity factor and the conviction to the last mile factor, then
Mhm.
80% of your team's shoulders are always dropped and they are not part of the game.
Got
That's
it.
the challenge, Pradeep.
Great. And but then the argument for that a lot of times, or the rationalization that we hear, Raghu, is that we don't have management support. I don't. One is the visibility. One is the element, and a very generic rationalization that you'll hear across is there's no management support. Correct. How true is that? And a related question to that is, we talked about 80% elimination of downtime, correct? And isn't that a little aggressive, in the sense, one is about setting realistic goals, at the same time, second is how to get management support to achieve such realistic goals, right? That's the question, I would say.
Good questions. One is, to me, part of what I answered in for your first question is also management support.
Okay.
It's if you are my manager and you tell me that Raghu, do it this way, and I don't feel it right, I'm not convinced, and I ask you why, and
Hmm.
you say it doesn't matter, you just have to do it because that's the objective that has been pushed down.
Hmm.
For me, that's one form of not getting management support from you,
Okay.
right? You a don't answer my question. Second, you don't take my input, and therefore you don't give me a direction when I need, a logical direction when I need, a convincing answer when I need, is lack of support. Now, second type of challenge is, okay, for some reason I think that yes, Pradeep told me I will go and implement it, but I see roadblocks. I'm struggling with something. I come back to you and say, hey, you have asked me to go down the path B, but path B is ridden with these challenges. How do I solve them?
Hmm.
And you don't offer any relief for me there, right?
Okay.
You don't bring in the tools, you don't bring in the processes, you don't get into a forum, you don't come into the trench and work along with me to see what I'm facing, but you want your end goal to be achieved. That's another form of lack of management support.
Hmm.
And so third is appreciation to what goes in doing it to the last mile. At least if you can appreciate that for me, while you don't solve my problems, while you don't tell me why, you say, Raghu, you are doing great, I see where you are struggling from A to B, but I'll give you more time, you go solve it, I'm fine.
Hmm.
Lack of empathy is the third piece, right? All of these together is what is the I can say 70 to 80% of generally what people mean by saying lack of management support. And to answer your
Right.
second question, is
Hmm.
80% aggressive, 90% aggressive? I agree, they are aggressive. Probably 10 years back, if you said an application has to be 99% real time, people thought it was aggressive.
Hmm.
uh, it was okay to be downtime, right?
Hmm.
Now we are living in an era that we are saying applications have to be 98% reliable and available all the time, is hygiene. So
Hmm.
aggressiveness of decade back request now is a hygiene requirement. Now,
Hmm.
at the end of the day, going back to the point you made, 61% of your users do not give you a second chance. They don't
Hmm.
care whether it is 99%, 98%, 100%. When they want
Correct.
to use the app, they need it. That's all. So, which means indirectly your users are asking you to move that needle towards 100%. So, whether it is aggressive or not, the answer is yes, it is aggressive. But do we have a choice? The answer is no.
No. Absolutely. No, no, I think that's a very good perspective to take. And I think we have become hyper competitive, and there is high levels of impatience about failure at the moment. In the sense, as in I can relate to a simple analogy in our personal lives. When we went to graduate school, for us, getting 88% marks was like considered to be a very good mark, and you would get a state rank in those days, in many of the southern states for 88%.
Yeah.
And today, for 99.9%, you probably won't get a seat in many of the colleges, right? Which you
and and
consider
and
as
you take it
probable. Yeah.
and you take it one step further, Pradeep. Today the world
Mhm.
has come to a point where the world doesn't care whether you're 99 or 69 or 89. You have to bring
Correct.
certain value to the table, right? Whether it is
Absolutely.
entrepreneurship, whether it is management, whether it is leadership, whether it is engineering, you need
Mhm.
to bring value to the table, and you need to bring value to the table for the ask that is there at that point in time. So you also need to bring
Absolutely.
change in the value that constant you bring to the table. So we have gone up the value chain there as well.
No, absolutely. And the next element, as in that reminds me of a very lighter, as in a joke on the lighter vein, right? For example, nowadays the person who loses 10 pounds has more privilege than a person who probably graduated Harvard. So even the value systems have changed, right? Suddenly, earlier you were like supposed to earn well and do well, and suddenly the value system now says, okay, you should look good, and earning well is considered basics. So and going to a good school was not important anymore. How the hell did you lose 10 pounds? That's more critical in a conversation than which school you really went to.
And
So
Pradeep, to that
I
point,
fully understand. Yeah.
lot of case studies that are discussed in business schools are about
Mhm.
people who have been successful without going to those business schools.
Irony of the world. Yeah, that is true. And I guess that's absolutely true. And I'm completely with you. And I think there is also a small note, one of the one last question, and I think we can continue debating, but I think a last question from Avinash is also there. So, what should we do if you're on the receiving end of the automation services and we are not getting or reaching these targets and the system is not performing as expected? Should we reevaluate the strategy from the beginning, including the changing providers? That's the question. Yeah.
Absolutely, yes, without doubt.
Okay.
Whether the revaluation of strategy leads to a vendor change is secondary. But
Hmm.
I like the question because it is saying, should we get back to the drawing board in a sense?
Hmm.
And the answer is a loud yes, because it is not about course correcting some component of your automation journey to make your automation metrics or output metrics look good. Because
Hmm.
make no mistake, your business objectives are constantly changing, so your business digital transformation journey is constantly changing. So it's like this, Pradeep. If I have had a weakness today, and you ask me to take a glass of glucose water and feel better,
Hmm.
should I do it? The answer is yes. But should I
Hmm.
go for a master health checkup? The answer is yes.
Absolutely. No,
Right.
I think
So
so.
going back to the drawing board and reevaluating stuff is is very important. And if that needs to include vendor strategy,
Hmm.
changing the vendor, yes. But one point of consideration though, 99% of the times it is not vendors who fail you,
Hmm.
because vendor is only the supplier of what
Hmm.
you want. And at best, in the highest value part of the value chain, he's a partner and an advisor also. But the
Hmm.
final call is taken by the enterprise, the consumer
Hmm.
of that
Hmm.
service. So I think
Okay.
it's as much important to reevaluate what objectives were set and how that approach has been defined for vendors,
Hmm.
in as much as we evaluate the vendor's performance itself.
Got it. Got it. And again, as in this is my question, and again, I will finish with that. The question here is, see, there is an uncertain environment out there which is operating. That's a given, right? And what they are evolving into and how this transformation will evolve into is also uncertain, correct? And the third aspect is, but I also do not have a problem solving toolkit in which will address that uncertainty. So, have you seen any kind of a shift in terms of people designing their way forward rather than simply applying the previously known system thinking principles? Any thought on that?
Very, 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 very good question, because that's the rubber meeting the road question.
Okay.
Um, Yes, I have
Mhm.
seen enterprises putting together a blueprint. See, we speak about open architectures in software. We speak
Mhm.
open architectures in hardware.
Mhm.
It's time that we look at open architectures in coming up with with elements of traversing through that digital transformation journey. And that open architecture at best means
Mhm.
we will tell you the nuggets of your
Mhm.
focus, like how we spoke today. These are the five
Mhm.
questions you need to answer for clarity to start with. These are the four types of assurances you need to focus on. These are the
Mhm.
six elements that you need to focus on. This is an open architecture thinking, right?
Correct.
Now, every organization's context is different for two reasons. One,
Mhm.
the specific customer segment that they are hooked into and the way they are servicing their customer segment.
Mhm.
Second, their own DNA and culture of the
Mhm.
organization. So,
Mhm.
one inward component, one outward hooked component, both together define the uniqueness of the organization.
Mhm.
So every organization has to take these 2 points into consideration and put
Mhm.
this open architecture before them. These are the five
Mhm.
questions. These are the six nuggets. These are the four types of assurance that I need to take. So
Mhm.
now bring in a cross-functional team of IT,
Mhm.
engineering, business, all of them,
Mhm.
including the leadership, and then now say what should be our digital transformation journey and why, and build that architecture contextualized to the organization yourselves. At best, you can take an advisory support, but build it yourself so that you own it. When you own it, you drive it to the fruition.
Brilliant. Brilliant. I think we can keep continuing the conversation, and I think this actually lays the ground for one of the ideas that we talked about, as to how do we actually tell the story of digital transformation through a kind of a book, right? Which is what we were talking about before you came onto the call and to the stage. So we certainly will make a humorous Dilbert kind of a approach to explaining transformation. I think that's fantastic. But really, really, thanks a lot, Raghu, for coming over, taking your time of your busy schedule. I really appreciate you sharing with us some very interesting perspectives and also laying ground for the next one because you refer to digital immunity, which is exactly what Avinash is going to speak on next. Okay, and in fact, he's talking a very interesting. I like his title a lot. He said bulletproof, is which is very interesting word. And I would be very curious to know how he's going to bulletproof, the entire digital transformation journey or build an immunity system to bulletproof their mobile and web applications. So let me and thanks a lot, Raghu, and we will share some of these questions.
Yeah,
It would be great if you could also provide some more detailed insights and some white papers that you would want to community learn from. We would love to circulate it with them as well. Okay.